Danny Meyer, welcome to the Daily Social Distancing Show.
It's good to be distant from you.
Yeah, we have to figure out new language for how we meet and interact with people. First of all, let's talk about what's going on in the world of restaurants right now. You have been in the restaurant business for many decades. You are somebody who started some of the most iconic chains, including Shake Shack, which means that your companies are responsible for thousands of employees. What is the state of the restaurant business right now in America?
It's bleak right now, and my heart goes out to, I believe there's something like 10 million unemployed restaurant workers in the country right now. My heart also goes out to all the people we do business with. So think about the farmers, the growers, the fishermen, um, the people who do our flowers, the people who do our linen. Nobody's got a job right now, and we're
Mhm.
just waiting till it feels safe to bring our teams back to work.
And one of the things, your group was responsible for early on was reacting to COVID-19 even before it was mandatory to do so. There were locations where people were told to stay home. This was before people had to do it. Why were you doing that before anyone was told to do it? Was there information that your company had that we didn't know about, or was it just precaution?
We were watching the news and reading and just kind of tuning out politicians and tuning in the scientists early on. And you're right, we had a couple of scares. One was at our restaurant in New York called The Modern, and one was at Union Square Cafe in New York City. They
Mhm.
both turned out to be scares, but when you close the restaurant because you send home a cook who said that they had a flu, and you said, well, maybe it's the COVID, and then they can't get a test, and you end up throwing out food and closing for 2 days. And then you keep reading articles, you say, we just have to get ahead of this thing because it's only going to keep happening. And it was frightening. It was frightening our staff. If you were a guest in one of those restaurants when we closed it and we came up to you and we couldn't say someone has COVID because we didn't know, you were afraid. And we just said, enough is
Right.
enough. This game is about survival. It's first about human survival. And of course, that is what has created economic survival as a next recourse.
There is a question that is going to be lingering for a long time, and that is 10 million people or so work in restaurants in this country. Those people can't go to work. And the big question is, when will they be able to go back to work? Because restaurants seem like, just like we have with comedy shows, some of the spaces that may be able to open the latest, and even then won't even be able to open at full capacity. Like, what does that mean for the industry? Can you run a restaurant at 25%, the way governors are saying restaurants should be run?
No, no. As a matter of fact, I've been doing this for over 30 years, and I don't think I've ever figured out how to run a profitable restaurant under 80% capacity. And so while we are learning by the day the kind of safety protocols it would take to open your restaurant, it won't look like the restaurant you knew and missed. It won't smell or sound or feel like the restaurant you knew or missed. And the restaurant won't be able to survive that way.
On the economic side, I would be remiss if I didn't talk to you about a story that really was sparked by Shake Shack, and that was the PPP money for which the government has set aside for small businesses. Now, this story was really interesting because, we heard that Congress had passed this bill. They were going to be giving 300 odd billion dollars to small businesses around America to help them keep running. Then, and I think Shake Shack was the first time we saw it in the news, we heard Shake Shack was giving back $10 million, and we found out that small or the smallest businesses hadn't received loans, and then it became a snowball. We started hearing that, a lot of companies had taken the money, the bigger companies had the money, but small businesses didn't. There are a few questions I'll ask you about this. Number one, why did Shake Shack even ask for this money in the first place? Because most people would say Shake Shack isn't a small business.
Shake Shack did the responsible thing on behalf of its employees to apply for the loan. The way the law was written, if you had any fewer than 500 employees per business, per restaurant, Shake Shack has about 48 employees per restaurant, you are eligible. The banks made the loans. Shake Shack did the right thing. However, the very day after Shake Shack received the loans, the news came out that the government had severely underfunded the payroll protection program. There was a justifiable outcry. of many, many small businesses who had not been able to access it, either because the government had run out of money or perhaps they didn't have the banking relationships that a business like Shake Shack did. And so Shake Shack then, with that information, did the right thing and responded and returned the loan. Interestingly, since that point, about $2 billion in loans have been returned. So, it's like so many aspects of this virus. There is no roadmap, there's no crystal ball, and you just have to keep using your compass with the information you have at that time.
So then how do you respond to the critics of Shake Shack who say, but why did you apply in the first place? I mean, if a company can give back 10 million, then surely it doesn't need the 10 million in the first place.
Well, interestingly, the way I would respond was when you're running a business, your primary responsibility should be to your employees. And when you apply for that loan, right in the face of the bottom dropping out of sales across an entire country, I would argue that Shake Shack's employees are no more or less valuable than any employees. And that's where our heart was. And that's why we applied. But I also am very, very aware that the minute we learned that in some respects, unbeknownst to us, because there was no fine print on this thing that said, by the way, line up today or you're not gonna have funding to get it. Once we learned that, and sure, there was a lot of outcry, and I would be too. Then Shake Shack did the right thing at that moment and returned the loan. Now, I do want to say something that the payroll protection plan, even leaving aside what I just said, is a deeply flawed program for restaurants. So it's been largely analyzed by people who say, should it be for small business or medium business or large business? And what I would say is maybe, but maybe an even better way to look at it is by industry. So take the restaurant industry, for example. By applying one set of forgiveness date to all businesses in the country, which is 8 weeks after you receive the loan, you have almost made this loan even more onerous for my industry. I think about small restaurants across the country who got the loan and who now have to rehire their employees by June 30th, or they're on the hook for a lot of money. Our industry will not be able to be back in business and have rehired people by June 30th. So this program, if it's going to work, certainly for the restaurant industry, which is such a big part of the national economic ecosystem, I really think that forgiveness day needs to be extended for all restaurants to at least 6 months after government's mandate that you can be back in business, not some arbitrary date that might work for an office but doesn't work for a place of gathering.
It's a dilemma, and you have to think of it as a business owner and then as a human being as well. What's interesting about the dilemma you're in, though, is it doesn't seem like there's an end in sight. So what is your best case scenario and what is your worst case scenario right now? Where do restaurants stand? Because everyone eats at them, whether you're eating at a takeout place or at a fancy restaurant, people want to eat out, people order food, not everybody can and does cook. So what do you think the future holds as it stands?
I'd say the best case scenario is that sooner than later, our industry as a whole can have access to testing so that employees can safely come to work. Once we know that's the case, then I think that, like so many other industries, this isn't going to be like turning on the light switch where all of a sudden, voila, there's the restaurant you knew and loved. So we need revenue. We don't have any revenue right now, but as soon as we start to figure out entrepreneurial ways to create revenue, then the next best case scenario, and really the one that I think everyone's waiting for, are two things. A, that there is some type of drug that mitigates the virus if you have it. We're starting to hear some positive noise about that right now. But then, of course, to encourage people to come back to restaurants, there's going to need to be a vaccine. And I think all of us are praying for that. I would say the vaccine for this virus is the equivalent now of what metal detectors were before people started to feel safe getting on airplanes. The difference is we had that technology back in 9/11. We just had to deploy it, but we don't have the technology of having a virus detector right now.
Before I let you go, I want to talk to you about a new job that you've taken on, which is probably one of the most important. Governor Cuomo has asked you to be part of his reopening committee. He's assembled a group of people from different walks of life. You are one of them. What advice are you giving the governor? How are you basing, your advice? Are you using science? Are you using medical advice? Are you thinking from a business perspective? What are you saying to the governor about when the right time to open New York will be?
Well, I've been asked to be on the committee, but I have not yet been asked for my advice. The one thing that I am doing is asking advice from people in our industry because I don't have all the answers. I don't think any of us does. But if I can be a coalescing voice for people, for whether you're from a bakery or a diner or a fancy restaurant or a bistro or a chain, I don't really care. I want to get voices together because the state of New York, whether you're talking about, the city of Manhattan or all the way up to Buffalo, depends upon restaurants. It depends upon them economically and also emotionally.
Well, Danny Meyer, thank you so much for joining us on the Daily Social Distancing Show. I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, Trevor.